In the last video, we talked about the Virginia Adult ESOL Content Standards, what they are, why we have them, the components of the standard, what they mean for instruction and assessment, and I mentioned at the very end of it the class checklists. So in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the checklists, which again are available on the Adult ESOL Wiki, which you all have access to. We have content standards checklists for all 4 language skills. The checklists are basically the normal content standards in an abbreviated form that fits on one page and allows for assessment. So the checklists are handy because they allow you to document student progress throughout the term. We have them, as I mentioned, for all 4 language skills. And though we do have reading checklists, for reading we have standardized pre and post tests that will help us determine whether or not a student has made sufficient progress in their reading and is performing at the next proficiency level. However, the checklists are still valuable because they help you identify what reading skills should be taught at a particular level and what students should be able to do to move on to the next level, which would help you in your instruction. For writing, you can collect writing samples throughout the term and use the checklist to keep a record of the benchmarks and indicators that the students achieve or need more practice in. So we have evidence of reading and writing progress. So the checklists are particularly helpful for speaking and listening because we don't have that evidence in terms of writing samples or a standardized test that can show us progress in speaking and listening for each student. And we don't have a concrete way of keeping track of student progress in these skills since these speaking and listening are so in the moment. We have no evidence to look back at when we're doing our end of term assessments. So without these checklists, all we have is our memory and professional knowledge, which is valuable and wonderful, but it's all in our heads. So using these checklists provide evidence to substantiate our assessment of the student. Just as the CASAS test and the writing samples are evidence of reading and writing improvement, if we keep track throughout the term on these checklists, they substantiate our assessment of the student. Okay, here's an example of the low intermediate speaking standard. These checklists provide the content standards in an abbreviated format, and it all fits on one page. So you'll see the content standards on the left side. You'll also see space for students' names. On each side of a paper, you can get 15 students' names. So you can keep track of your student progress here, and if you photocopy this double-sided, if you have 30 students, they'll all fit on this one page. Now, you may not use this every day, but if you've used the content standards in your planning and have an activity in which you had planned that might demonstrate students' attainment of any of these benchmarks or indicators, you might want to take this out and informally, as you walk around and you listen and assess the students, you might want to make some notations. So if we go back to that example that I gave in the last video, in which I wanted students to mix and mingle and initiate conversations about their weekend activities. So they would be asking about what another student did over the weekend, and they'd need to be using the past tense. So if I use that activity, as the students are mixing and mingling, I would go around, informally listen, see how the conversations are going, and see how well they were able to initiate the conversation. And then I might make notations such as these. So I have my students up at the top, and then under benchmark S4.1, indicator A, I've made some notations about how well the students performed during that activity. Now, this doesn't mean that I never go back to this indicator. There might be other times during the term where this indicator and benchmark would also be appropriate and for the activity that I will be doing. So in that case, I might want to go back to just some of the students who had trouble the first time around and see if they are doing any better. And then I can go ahead and make other notations or change those notations so I have a record that they have attained that indicator. Okay, so just to recap, the checklists are available in all 4 language skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. They provide the content standards in an abbreviated format that all fits on one page and allows you to make notations as to students' progress. We do have them for reading and writing, as mentioned. We do not push them as much as we do the speaking and listening. And the reason for that is just as I mentioned, that speaking and listening is very spontaneous, and it's hard to keep track of students' progress throughout the term for 30 students. But if you use these checklists, and like I mentioned, you don't have to use them every day, just when you decide that you're going to assess a benchmark or indicator, and if you use these and you keep track of students' progress, then you have evidence to substantiate your end-of-term assessments. So actually that is what the next video is going to be about, end-of-term assessments and documenting on the green form. So I look forward to the next time you are with us. Thank you. Bye-bye.